but Sivakumar. Shiv also doesn't require any introduction. Group head of Agri and IT businesses, ITC Limited, the man behind Chopal, which has become a case study in Cambridge and other universities. Uh, I think I was happy to be with him when this whole discussion started in ITC. He is somehow is we've been together for a while. Graduation at Silver Jubilee, he was there with me, and then I ran away to Irma College for my management in rural management. There also I find him. Then I look for a job, and then there also I find him in ITC as a boss. And then so we keep meeting like this. During each Chopal initiative was developed and executed during that time for the soybean industry. Then it became so huge that for the wheat business, which is one of the strongest brands of this decade or last 15 years, I think Ashirwad wheat it became so strategically important for wheat sourcing, the Chopal. I found him. Let's see what magic he would bring to the table today. Shiv, over to you. You have to
Thank
unmute.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sudhakar. Yes, so we go back 40 years from those streets in Kurnool to now the waves over the air as we talk across multiple locations. And it's a great pleasure to be here. Namaste, Swamiji, Sudhanshuji, Dr. James Fry. We also see each other after 20 years. Adityadi, and looking forward to listen to everyone else as well. So the theme of let me share my deck. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So the theme, as you've seen in the flyer, is if it is a bull or a bear, what is COVID going to do for the vegetable oil sector? Coming after someone like Dr. James Fry, I don't want to put my own predictions as to what is going to happen. But let me go to another animal and say talk about elephants. You know, why I picked up elephants, since we're in any case talking about animals, is that elephants have a great knack of digging even the dry land where potentially water is underneath and discovering water for themselves as well as for everybody else around. So I think when we are looking at a COVID and a post-COVID environment, I think the effort of webinars like this and the interaction that we all have here is to try and uncover what is in store. Obviously, the present holds some kind of a beacon for the future, and consequently, we need to figure out what is going to happen. Something that all of us have heard as a new phrase is this new normal. Yes, the normal is reversed here, and that's the new normal. You know, many things that we are now going to see or have already seen over the last 2 to 3 months are quite different from what they were in the past. And so I'll cover that as the larger part of the trends. And the way we are going to consume will be different. The way we will produce will be different. The way we will then crop in terms of shifts and so on will be quite different. Although we heard from Dr. James Fry saying that much of the big impact of COVID is behind us, but I think many things are not going to be the same again. For example, this picture that you see is just about 3 months old, but you just can't visualize sitting like this again for a long time, because the vaccine is going to be at least 1 year away, if not 2 years, by the time it reaches all of us. We can all take precautions by virtue of many tips that Swamiji had given us and other exercises that we've been practicing. But something like this is out, and consequently, the consumption of food that occurs in food courts, in restaurants, in public spaces is all pretty much out. And we have seen decline of huge magnitude, depending on the nature of food service, anywhere between 60 to 90%. But we also heard in the beginning that a lot of it is being made up by home consumption. I'm also doing a little bit of a commercial plug here with an ITC MasterChef packs here, because the phenomenal jump that happened for not only things like atta and oil and everything at home, but what brings the exotic food home, and consequently its own implication. While quite a lot of this can be baked or air fried, but a fair amount of oil consumption goes along with the frozen for ready to cook and ready to eat products like ITC MasterChef. So a lot of what we lost in the food service and out of home consumption has now moved in home, and people are discovering what it is to come back and eat what we have been preparing from our earlier generations. So how we consume is fundamentally shifting, and therefore what kind of zooming in for vegetable oils, what kind of oils may get consumed, what kind of oils may get out of fashion will have a lot to do with this particular trend. Crops like corn, rice, wheat, soy, and sugar, and many other crops which include palm. So that was a kind of shifts. Now, yeah, you can now move. The shift in production is going to be the next big one. Again, we heard from multiple people, particularly Sudhanshuji, in terms of earlier the world was focusing on resource efficiency. From the time the WTO agreement on agriculture happened in the 80s and 90s as it got negotiated, the concern was that we needed 2 more Earths to produce food enough for the population by 2050. And therefore, we must move towards a global resource efficiency in terms of grow only those crops where one is more efficient, and move to a more global supply chains. And that's how the whole discussions on tariff reductions and other aspects happened in the WTO agreements. And from a situation like that, already we started the trend, and you can move to the next slide, of one of the self-sufficiency. And this is how a cartoon which shows that self-sufficiency is its own complexities. You can't be so entirely self-sufficient, and it is true of vegetable oil sector that we are now talking about, because we currently import as much as 60% of all our vegetable oil consumption, and it doesn't make sense for us to become 0% and be completely self-sufficient. Nor does it make sense to keep moving from 60 and further upwards. I think there'll be a balance that will be achieved as part of policy. Many countries around the world, even where they're importing from single origins or double origins across different food crops, are now saying, how do we diversify our source of supply, or how do we look at increasing domestic production? We are in the process of engaging with several countries now for long-term agreements, and as part of that, some kind of sectoral arrangements being negotiated. So consequently, tomorrow's world, we will see a self-sufficiency drive, and at least partially balance in the vegetable oil sector. I would say something like 30-40% is a fair import reliance that you could have in self-sufficiency. It's a general number. You can pick your own number, but certainly 60% or more is an unsustainable kind of a number. And that's what brings me to my last point in the next slide. And you can move on to the next slide. And everyone has talked about oil palm. And have you already moved? I can't see the next slide here on my screen. Yeah. So most of this has been said by people. I'm only paraphrasing or rather picture phrasing that the potential identified by the mission on oil seeds, edible oils is nearly 20 lakh hectares of oil palm plantation. And today we are at 3.5. And given that you have a 4 tons per hectare potential, there is a huge opportunity. Much of this has also been identified long back. It's not as if it has been talked about afresh. Of course, there is a plenty of opportunity even in other oils like rice bran and cotton and number of other species. But palm holds the highest. And this is where I want to link up with the most recent reforms in agriculture that were just announced. And we are likely to see the enactment of that in the next few days. And an important area is going to be the reform in Essential Commodities Act and the APMC as well as the farming agreements. So palm is something which is a great opportunity for the together spirit that the previous speakers have spoken about. That how do you create a reciprocal dependency between the farmer and the processor and in turn for the consumer. That in any case, you can't take these bunches too far away from the production centers. So consequently, it is important in terms of how the processing units engage with farmers in a much stronger manner to do the extension work and develop productivity, and productivity being the single mantra for us to be self-sufficient or self-reliant, and not through higher prices, not through higher tariffs. And so I think this is where the key is held, and in being that together of the entire value chain is also something that for a very, very long time, we have seen that we moved one way from literally zero imports to 60% imports in the span of about 15 years. So now I think moving back to 30-40% imports in the span of next 10 years is a goal that probably the nation will have to set for itself through productivity, through diversification of the oil basket. And that's how we will support the consumption shifts and the cropping shifts, as well as the entire field, the way it is going to change. And therefore, rather than a short-term bulla bear that all of us are anxiously waiting to deal with, I also want to trigger that elephant thought and say that let's dig and look for something which is in the longer term also. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Shiv, for that insightful experience, views on some of these issues you've seen at close quarters.